Brittany says, so I have a question regarding the Lord's Supper and Passover. If Jesus was simply celebrating the Passover, which that's what I say, and the Lord's Supper is the Passover, then what gives the church the authority to take the Lord's Supper more than once a year at Passover? Does it void it? And how do we handle the issue in non-messianic gatherings? Okay, this is a fantastic question. So, let's go back. We're going to take this a snippet at a time. What gives the church the authority to take the Lord's Supper more than once a year? I think that I personally don't think that the church is taking the Lord's Supper more than once a year. I think that they are. But the Lord's Supper is the Passover. So if you want to do something that says, hey, this reminds me of Passover, and we're going to fellowship together, and we're going to eat together and worship together. And hey, doesn't this remind us of what Christ did at Passover? I think that that's actually what's going on in 1 Corinthians 10 and 11. Is that they're having these meals, and they're remembering, Christ's death, resurrection, ascension, which automatically brings about the idea of the Last Supper. And so maybe they start to eat meals together in worship, which they were doing anyway, right? The Jews saw, certainly the Jews before Christ came on the scene believed that eating was a form of worship, which is why why it was against the rules to eat with Gentiles.
So would you say that these are, like, let's just presume that Paul, writing to the Corinthians, is saying, giving like this blanket approval in a way of like, look, if you're going to have these meals, and it all hinges on this word as often as you do it, right? Yeah. And how do we interpret that? Does that mean we can do it daily, weekly, monthly, every other month or whatever, or annually? So let's just say, yeah, there was similar to, and we've talked about this before, similar to in Numbers chapter 9, where they celebrate the first memorial Passover. So they've been out of the land almost a full year. It's coming on the anniversary of the actual Exodus. God says, keep the Passover. So they're in the wilderness of Sinai. They've got the Mishkan set up, etc. And then it says there were some people who were impure, and God gives this accommodation to celebrate Pesach in the second month for those who were somehow incapable of participating. So the idea there, even in the Torah, in the book of Numbers, participation in the Pesach could, by God's own word, be fulfilled in the second month rather than the first month. Is it possible Paul sees this as a precedent to say, okay, there's two parallel lines here. One is obligation to remember redemption. The other is recognition that there are constraints on the human side that prevent the ideal. And so it's possible Paul sees that and says, you know what, if God allows for that, then what's wrong with a teaching meal, right? A meal that is a teaching meal where the gospel is taught to people who are from a pagan background. They might not, you know what I mean? It's like they don't have
in the
any
diaspora.
Knowledge.
Yeah,
A heavily Gentile. Why not have a teaching meal that is teaching them about the feasts, about the calendar, but also, so it's based in the Torah, but it also leads all the way up to who Yeshua is and what was the significance of that night and of that meal. Because there's no way around it. I mean, it's central that is a Passover, that Yeshua is the Pascha, he says in chapter 5. And by chapter 10 and 11, he's rehearsing the night he was betrayed, right? He's going through the core situation of that Passover meal. So I agree with you that I think that, and it's possible there could be churches out there that when they do communion, it's going to be another spectrum. You're going to have some that have leavened bread and juice, and some are probably going to have unleavened bread and wine. And I bet there are pastors out there. I mean, I don't know any personally, but they probably say this is a mini rehearsal of the Passover. This is we're remembering something that has to do with the fulfillment of the Passover.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Tell us your thoughts on this subject by leaving a comment in the comment section. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and enable those notifications. And we'll see you in the next video.